So, good afternoon, everybody. We are starting the workshop of the Social Brain Research Group, 2014 first semester. Each year, our group organizes at least 2 workshops, and our main goal is to achieve a broad understanding on issues on semantics and on cognitive sciences. And this year we invited María Frápolli, who is a researcher and professor at the University of Granada, to speak about her latest book, The Nature of Truth, and we will have to comment her presentations John Bollender, Tudor Baetu, Vasilis Sompandis, and Adriano Brito, and myself. And also we have here the participation of members of the Social Brains Group who will discuss and debate the main issues presented by María Frápolli. So, María is a long-term researcher at the University of Granada and was former president of the Logic and Philosophy of Science Association in Spain, and has been working and contributing for many years now for the analytic philosophy in Europe, and has now some cathedratic and research posts or some in Spain and Europe. Has been working also with Susan Hack and other analytical philosophy around the world. Okay, Maria, I think we can start. I am very happy to have you here. And again, you were here in 2008 presenting your views on truth already. And so we have the word. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. So, okay, thank you very much. First of all, I have to say that I'm sincere if I say that I think that I don't deserve so much attention, so I feel deeply honored. Thank you very much to Sofia and to all of you for being here. And as Sofia has said, I was here in 2008 to present my views on truth. And I was naive enough to think that if I wrote a book on the topic, I will get rid of it. Obviously, this hasn't occurred, so I'm here again to speak about the notion of truth, the nature of truth. And I want to say that I don't know the nature of what is the nature of truth. I don't know what is the nature of anything. The title of my book is because. So it's a reference to one of Ramsey's papers on truth, a paper who wasn't published during Ramsey's lifetime, and in this paper it was the first time, as I know, that in the 20th century somebody used the term prose sentence to explain the functioning of truth terms. And this is why I have sort of borrowed Ramsey's title. But I mean, I'm not going to talk about the nature of anything. In fact, this is not, I'm going to comment some slides from this presentation, but this is not the document I have prepared for today. I have another one, but I think that the most important thing in this, at this moment is that I try to explain you which are the philosophical motivations behind my proposal. The proposal is a technical proposal, and I will, of course, I will argue for it, and I will be happy to explain as much detail as you are interested in. But I think that the most important thing is understanding why I thought that this topic should be pursued. And the reason is that some years ago, I edited with a colleague of mine, a professor at the University of Granada, a volume, and now we have edited another one, putting together classical papers on truth, on the notion of truth in the 20th century. So the volume is called, there are two volumes. The first one is called Teorías de la Verdad en el siglo XX, Theories of Truth in the 20th Century, and the second one is called Teorías Contemporáneas de la Verdad, Contemporary Theories of Truth. And working on the topic, I realized that if there were so many interesting and different and even incompatible proposals on the notion of truth, something should go very wrong. There would be something very wrong in the core of the topic that allows so many different theories which are incompatible to each other. So the idea I drew after that work of edition was that the situation with the notion of truth was similar to the one depicted in the famous Indian story, in the famous in this Indian story, which is the blind man and the elephant. So there were several blind wise men who tried to understand, to understand and to express what an elephant was, and some of them touched here, and they thought that an elephant is like a wall, and some other touched here, and then they thought that it was a spear, and some of them thought that an elephant was like a snake, or like a tree, or like a fan, or like a rope, etc. And in some sense, the moral of this story is that all of them were right and all of them were wrong. And this is exactly the feeling I had when I began to work in the theories of truth in the 20th century. So what I want to say is that all these theories of truth, there are many others, but I have just mentioned some of them. Startis and Quine's disputational approach, or Quine's characterization of truth as a mechanism for semantic absence, or Horwich explanation of truth as a denominalizer, or Strawson's characterization of truth as a marker of illocutionary force. Where? From here to... Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay, all of them, and many others. The point is, each one takes some aspect of the functioning of the truth concept right. How is it possible then that at the end of the day we don't have a comprehensive theory of how the notion of truth works in natural language? Then what I think is that I don't believe in the eternal problems of philosophy. If a problem is eternal, there is something wrong with it. So my proposal is to stop and try to look at the problem of truth from a different perspective. But my perspective is nothing, neither radical nor original, because what I'm proposing is looking at the notion of truth, at the functioning of the concept, from the contemporary sciences of language, from contemporary linguistics and the philosophy of language. So nothing very strange. So I want to defend Aristotle's view. This means what I'm going to propose you here is, or I take it to be, a development of the Tarskian dictum, to say of what it is that it is, or of what is not that it is not, is true. Who could reject such a dictum, which is just an analytic truism? And I endorse the insight by Ramsey, the following insight. What is the meaning of true, of the word true? It seems to me that this is Ramsey's words. It seems to me that the answer is really perfectly obvious, that anyone can see what it is, and that the difficulty only arises, and that difficulties only arise when we try to say what it is. So the problem is with truth, or with the term truth, is not understanding their functioning. All of us master the notion. The problem is explaining this practice that we all master. So, seeing at the diversity of proposal is no wonder that people have defended that truth is a contradictory notion, or that the notion of truth cannot be defined, or that truth is primitive, or blah, blah, blah. Yes, no wonder. But I don't think so. I think that truth is a very, it's a complex notion, but that can be perfectly accounted for using the resources of contemporary philosophy of language, and this is what I'm going to try to explain to you in these days. Then go to the this is the document I have prepared for today. You can interrupt me anytime and make comments or whatever, because as I have said, I'm much more interested in communicating the general feature of my proposal than going into the details, which are more or less technical and that you can see in the book or in some papers. Which is the plan of my talk for today? Well, the last point is my proposal. My proposal is, so my approach to truth belongs to the prosententialist kind. So my proposal is prosententialism, or some variety of prosententialism. So prosententialism is Ramsey's proposal, but also I think it is Strosson's proposal. I would like to think that it was Aristotle's proposal. It's the proposal by Dorothy Grover, Christopher Williams, and Robert Brandon, contemporary. But what I have done is placing the prosententialist goal, which is a semantic thesis, into contemporary pragmatism. So I will do sorry. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. The idea is now so I have converted into pragmatism. So I think that this is the correct way of looking at a theory of meaning in general. I think that a pragmatic or pragmatist perspective is the correct perspective to overcome this inorganic variety of proposals, which cannot be pulled of them together without contradiction. So this is what I'm going to propose today. But this is the last point. The first points are much more general and probably much more interesting in some sense. So the first thing I want to defend is that pace frege, truth is not one of a kind. So there is nothing special in the notion of truth. So we have thousands of notions in natural languages which work in some sense like truth works. So nothing special with the notion. But it doesn't mean that the notion is trivial or redundant or simple or whatever. The notion of truth is a higher order notion, it's a higher order concept. And it's a quite complex notion that is put to work, so to say, in many different philosophical and scientific realms. For instance, we talk about truth, or we use, typically we use the notion of truth when we talk about epistemology, or when we talk about philosophy of science, when we talk about metaphysics, in sciences in general, in philosophy in general. So there are many different realms in which truth is put to work. But it doesn't mean that the notion is, or that the meaning of the notion is ambiguous, or that it has many different notions, or so. One of the theses I want to defend today is that the meaning of truth can be completely, exhaustively explained using the theoretical resources that contemporary philosophy of language puts at our disposal. So we can understand the notion of truth without any doubt just by using the theories and insights of contemporary philosophy of language. Another thesis that I want to defend is that understanding the meaning of truth, really understanding the meaning of truth, doesn't force us to renounce our ordinary discourse on truth. So we can continue using the notion in the way in which we do in our ordinary communicative exchanges. So we don't need to do anything about our way of talking. And a further thesis that I want to communicate is that a theory of truth, as any other theory, has precise limits. So not everything can be accounted for by a theory of truth. There are things that just lie outside the theory of truth. A theory of truth is a technical theory about the meaning of a notion in the same sense in which a theory of quantifiers is a technical proposal about the working of some kind of terms, nothing else. And then my proposal, which is prosententialism. This is the way in which I begin my book. And the question is, what is the mystery behind a toy conversation of this kind? Victoria, which is my daughter, says, I don't like Mondays. And Juan, which is my son, says, what Victoria says is true. Which is the mystery behind this normal communicative exchange? And my answer is none whatsoever. There is no mystery in the way in which we are using the terms here. We all understand what is going on in a conversation of this kind. The point is that there is no intractable feature in the functioning of truth. Truth is a concept that appears or can be expressed in natural languages by means of many different terms, but there is no mysterious feature from a semantic point of view in the meaning of these terms in natural languages. But this doesn't mean that the notion is simple or its functioning is obvious. On the contrary, it requires a highly sophisticated conceptual apparatus, but fortunately, we have it at our disposal. It's not what I'm trying to show is that my proposal is not ad hoc. So I'm not inventing a proposal to explain the meaning of truth, but I'm trying to take profit of the theoretical apparatus of meaning that we have in philosophy of language. So one of my purposes is to dispel the air of mystery that has traditionally accompanied the notion. To show that there is nothing really mysterious behind the notion, but at the same time explaining that there are several different theoretical levels involved in the apparently simple question, what is truth? What is truth can be answered in different ways because, in fact, it codifies different questions. This is the text by Ramsey that I have read before. This part I have read before, but not the second part, which is, so this is Ramsey's word. Or we must distinguish one question, what is truth, from the quite different question, what is true? We do not hope to learn an infallible means of distinguishing truth from falsehood, but simply to know what it is that this word true means. This was Ramsey's aim. It is a word, Ramsey says, it is a word which we all understand, but if we try to explain it, we can easily get involved, as the history of philosophy shows, in a maze of confusion. So, my purpose is to pursue Ramsey's project with some, I think, some essential differences. The first difference is that I'm not interested in the meaning of the word true. I'm interested in the meaning of the concept of truth, because, as I told my students again and again, we philosophers of language don't work on languages. It's a paradox, but it's true. We are not linguists. We philosophers of language work with concepts. So I'm interested not in the functioning of the term in a particular natural language, but on the functioning of the concept in every natural language, I hope. And I'm interested and because I'm interested in the functioning of the concept, I don't think that there is any essential difference in the way in which we talk about truth. when we talk about truth, we can say the truth, or so the truth, which is a substantive, a name, or is true, which is an adjective, or truly, which is an adverb, or it is true, which is allegedly an operator, or whatever. So I think that the differences in expression, in these expressions, are irrelevant. That the notion of truth, the concept, performs the same function under any under any linguistic guise in which it appears. Well, of course, I don't agree with Tarski when he said that the notion of truth was inconsistent, or alternatively, that natural languages are inconsistent because they include a notion like the notion of truth. I don't agree with Tarski, among other things, because I don't understand what it might mean that a language is inconsistent, and because now I'm a pragmatist, I cannot give any sense to the idea that a notion that, as far as I know, all human beings, all human beings with a developed, mature language possess, can be inconsistent. From a pragmatist point of view, this fact wouldn't make any sense. Of course, I don't agree with Davison, who declared that trying to define truth is a folly, or with Michael Lynch, who has said recently, it would be nice to find out the whole truth and nothing but the truth about truth. Nice, but practically impossible. I don't think so. But I put this quotation here, I have included this quotation here because this is something that almost everybody assumes. So it's something that I can't understand of the contemporary philosophy, in general philosophy of language in particular, that almost everybody accepts that the notion of truth is intractable or is undefinable or something like that. And there is no justification for such a claim. What I want to defend is that truth is a complex and multifunctional notion. And the various jobs that the notion performs are performed by means of the different kind of expressions in which by means of which the notion appears in languages. As I have said, the notion of truth has sometimes, or adopts sometimes the appearance of a adjective, it's true, or adverb, or an operator, or truth, etc. And I accept that there are different theoretical projects which are related to the notion of truth. For instance, there is, as we have seen in the text by Ramsey, one can inquire about the criteria by means of which we declare that some propositions are true and some other are false. This is a kind of project which is related to truth. But what I want to defend here is that this is not the only possible project, and the project that I'm going to pursue is the project of trying to give the meaning of truth. I don't think that giving the meaning of the notion will solve all problems related to it. I don't think so. So I think that maybe there are genuine epistemic or epistemological problems related to the notion of truth, that there are probably, I don't know, I don't understand them, but maybe there are metaphysical problems related to the notion of truth and so on. But what I do think is that without understanding the way in which the notion works in our system of concepts, we cannot understand how the notion works in some other realms. So, Susan Hart has said, not just in this paper, but several times, that there are multiple truths, but that truth is unique. This is a, let's say, a paradoxical truism. Something that I want to do is trying to explain in terms of contemporary philosophy of language this truism. And the way of saying it in, let's say, a more, probably a more sophisticated way of saying it, of expressing the same intuition, is that the content, so I try this paragraph to be an explanation of this intuition. The content of a particular act of ascribing truth to a content, so the content of a particular act of ascribing truth to a proposition, can be any element of a wide variety of contextually salient propositions, even though truth is not ambiguous in natural language. What I mean is that, so Susan has said, truth is unique. What does it mean? It means that she thinks, and I think too, that there is no mathematical truth versus physical truth, metaphysical truth versus empirical truth, necessary truth versus formal truth. No. Truth, the notion, is the same in every context. But it doesn't mean that we cannot apply the notion, so that we cannot ascribe the notion to propositions of any kind. In fact, we can say that a formal proposition is true. We can say that an empirical proposition is true. We can say that a mathematical proposition is true, or blah, blah, blah. Metaphysical proposition, religious proposition, aesthetic proposition is true, and so on. So, this is the whole, let's say, the whole mystery behind the idea that truth is one and multiple. Well, yes. It's one because the concept is the same, and it's multiple because you can apply the concept to different kind of propositions. Nothing particularly interesting here. So now go for the more technical details. I can stop here if you like, and we can talk about these general issues, or go?
No.
Okay. So, but if you have any comment of any kind.
Maria has in mind to be interrupted.
Not at all.
So you can ask.
Well, okay. So, I have said that I have converted into a pragmatist, and it's true, but my pragmatist is Fregean pragmatism. So people can think that Frege wasn't a pragmatist, but I assure you that he was. And the proof of it is what we all call now the principle of context. In the introduction to this masterpiece, The Foundation of Arithmetics, Frege said that only in the context of a sentence, well, he said Satz in German, which means both sentence and proposition, so we cannot be sure exactly what he meant, but he said that only in the context of a sentence, which is the standard translation, only in the context of a sentence has a word meaning. And I completely agree. And in fact, what he did in this book, in the Foundation of Arithmetics, is put into work this intuition in order to offer a definition of natural number, the notion of natural number. He didn't say, but it perspires from the book that his diagnosis about the problems that the definition of natural number has had for theorists was that they cut the language in pieces too short, just the number. And what he proposed was, okay, look at the whole sentence. Look at the equations, which are the fundamental sentences in which natural numbers appear. So I take this book to be a development of this principle of context, this idea of the principle of context. Again, before Frege, we didn't have a definition of natural number. Frege's proposal was that the reason was that we should look not at the term, but at the whole sentence in order to understand what is the contribution of the term at the proposition, to the proposition expressed by the sentence. So I propose to do the same with the notion of truth. So I'm a pragmatist and I'm a Fregean. So one of my hypotheses is, like Frege's, that we don't know what is the meaning of truth because we have had a too narrow focus. We have focused just on terms and not on what speakers, what rational agents do when they use the whole sentence. Okay? So, Frege said that natural numbers appear typically in equations. I'm saying that truth terms appear typically in what is now called truth ascription. What is a truth ascription? A truth ascription is a sentence, like this one, in which truth is applied, ascribed to the content of a subject, of an expression, which is fully propositional. So a truth, sorry.
No, I'm saying if you need to write, there are...
I will. Okay. So the idea is, what do we do when we use the term truth in any of its guises? Well, what we do is attributing or ascribing truth to what? To a proposition, to a fully propositional content. Then, the standard way in which or the standard sentence in which we use truth terms have this form. A subject, what she says, whose content is a proposition, and then a predicate, a dummy predicate, in which appears the notion of truth. We call this a truth ascription, and as happens with many terms in the philosophy of language, the expression truth ascription is so can have different meanings. It can refer to the whole act, the speech act in which an agent ascribes truth to a content, but also to the sentence itself. So, my proposal is, in a primary sense, a truth ascription is an act. And being a pragmatist means that practices are our facts, the facts that we have to explain, and the beginning of the inquiry. So we have to look at the acts that an agent performs by the use of a truth ascription. But then, once we have understood the general import, the whole import of this act, we can continue an inquiry about the meaning of the sentences we have used in this kind of acts, and then, if we are still alive, we can go and try to understand the meaning of subsentential expressions. But understanding the meaning of subsentential expressions is something that we cannot do unless we understand first the kind of act in which we are involved. This is a pragmatist methodology, and this is what I'm going to do here. Okay, so Sofia suggested that maybe I might use the blackboard, which is a whiteboard. Yes, but she's right, because the idea is quite simple, and I will give you examples in some other slides, but at this time we can say something like, imagine Sofia says, I don't know.
I thought to say.
Yeah, because we are very original. Probably is an example that have been never used in the philosophy of language. It's raining. So Sofia says, it's raining. So, what is a truth ascription? A truth ascription is the act in which I ascribe truth, and then I say, it's true of what? Of what kind of
Sorry, it's very faint, we cannot read it. I mean, I don't know. No.
Better?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Sofia.
Beautiful, Maria.
Yes. I'm smiling. Sofia says it's raining. So what is a truth ascription? A truth ascription is just an act in which typically a speaker uses a sentence of the following kind. A sentence in which the predicate is true is said of the content of a singular term. But the singular term that you put here, which has to be a singular term for this sentence to be well formed, the singular term that you put here has to have a fully propositional content. So you can say, it is true, but this is a truth ascription only if this it refers to a whole proposition, or you can say what Sofia says is true. Okay? So, but the idea is that you can't predicate truth, you can't predicate truth of objects, but just of propositional concepts. When we want to be very technical in the philosophy of language, we say that truth is a higher order concept. This is what being a higher order concept means. Sometimes people, theorists of truth, have asked about the bearers of truth, and people say, okay, sentences can be bearers of truth, or propositions can be bearers of truth, and so on. Well, what I have said shows that the primary bearers, if this kind of inquiry had any sense, but I doubt it, the primary bearers of truth are propositions, because they are the, let's say, entities to which we ascribe the notion when we use truth ascriptions. It is common, it is standard to say that truth is a semantic notion, the semantic notion par excellence. I don't understand what this means, I have to say. Truth is as a semantic notion as it is a syntactic expression and a pragmatic act. All our notions have a semantic side, of course, because all our notions are meaningful or try to be meaningful. So I'm not rejecting that truth is a semantic notion. What I'm saying is it's a semantic notion and a syntactic and a pragmatic. It has the whole pack. But I would like to differentiate three kind of theses related to these three levels of inquiry: the syntactic level, the semantic level, and the pragmatic level. I know that this distinction in these three levels has proved to be very useful, very fruitful in the last century, but I think that it is time now to give it deserved rest and put it aside. I think that sometimes these kind of distinctions are, well, when they give everything that they have, sometimes they are more a hindrance than an aid, because people tend to think that this distinction, syntactic, semantic, and pragmatics, in fact represent ontological levels of reality, and that there is something out there which is syntax, and other realm of reality which is semantics, and other realm which is pragmatics. And this is wrong, just wrong. But in any case, as I have said already, I think that if we want to preserve the distinction, we should begin with the pragmatic level, so looking at the actions that the agents perform. But in any case, I can say something about truth in each one of these levels, and this is what I'm going to do now. So what I mean is that I don't think that the distinction is very interesting. I think that we shouldn't assume that this distinction represents levels of reality of any kind, but if we want to use it as a methodological aid, it's okay. The core I will answer this question. For instance, I mean, we can use this aid. For instance, I don't. Well, you have worked with Recanati, you have told me so. You know that a hot issue in contemporary philosophy of language is that the divide between semantics and pragmatics, which is semantics and which is pragmatics. And I say, what is the interest of this kind of divide? Semantics is exactly what we want it to be, nothing else. And the same with pragmatics. You know what I mean? So that there is nothing out there that is really the semantic realm, and there is another thing which is really the pragmatic realm. Semantics and pragmatics are ways of looking at one reality which is one and the same. This is the point I'm trying to stress here. I'm not saying that it's not interesting at all. What I'm saying is that if you go too deep in this kind of debate, you run the risk of being scholastic and just develop thousands of little terms to distinguish probably small, irrelevant things. I don't know if you want.
I don't want to.
Okay. No. But
just see if your approach was to do, let's say, taxonomics and pragmatics of truth, or if it was just throw it aside and look at truth in a more holistic way.
Both. So I think, well, this is it's a pragmatist intuition too. I learned it from Susan Haack, but she attributes it to Peirce, which is the idea of that reality is continuous. And this is what American pragmatists call synergism. It's a very ugly term, and this is probably why nobody knows it, synergism. And the idea is reality, whatever this means, doesn't come into parts, into portions. So we are in, I was about to say we face, but we don't face. We belong to our reality, which is continuous. So I don't think that there is nothing essential in this distinction between semantic, pragmatics, and syntax. What I mean is that if you want to follow this distinction, we can say things in the three levels, but if these levels don't help us in understanding the functioning of the notion, I don't have any problems in throw them away. This is the point. So, I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I'm trying to understand a bit better this notion of truth ascriptions as complex propositional variables. So when you're saying that these are complex propositional variables, as I understand it, the variable part is the placeholder for a proposition, right? And then the true predicate behaves like a logical constant or something?
Both, but not, you can choose. Let me 5 minutes and I will explain. It's okay. Let me explain. This is the semantic code of the proposal. This is the semantic code of the proposal. I'm a presententialist because I think that truth ascriptions work as propositional variables. And I have said complex propositional variables because the term, and now I'm focusing on the subsentential expression, the truth terms are means for building complex propositional variables. But, for instance, Dorothy Grover said that the prose sentence was the singular term that acted as subject in truth ascriptions. But for instance, Christopher Williams understood that the prose sentence is the whole sentence. What have I done? Well, I have accepted both, and I distinguish in my book. I mean, this just, what I mean is that there is nothing here but a piece of terminology. What I have said in my book is that, so I will distinguish between sentential prosentences and nominal prosentences. The idea of a prosentence is that it is an expression in language that can refer or inherit a propositional content. But this function can be performed by expressions with the category of singular terms and by expressions with the category of complete sentences. And why? Well, this is a pragmatist explanation. My point has been here that, so I'm having in my mind the metaphor of the toolbox, the Wittgensteinian metaphor, and the idea is it depends on what you are doing. If you want to refer to a proposition or to a propositional content, you have to use the appropriate tool. And in natural languages, we use singular terms to refer. But sometimes you might be interested in assuming or endorsing a propositional content. Assuming or endorsing is not something that you can do with singular terms, which are appropriate tools for referring. So we use the whole sentence. Then, what is a prosentence? A prosentence is a variable whose content is a proposition. But prosentences can be of different kinds. We can have nominal prosentences and sentential prosentences. This is my point. Is it clear now? So, the idea, the core of prosententialism is a semantic, let's say, semantic thesis. And the semantic thesis is that prosentences work as variables. Do we have simple variables in natural languages to perform this function? The answer is yes, we have. For instance, we have two adverbs in all natural languages I know of. We have two adverbs that are simple prosentences, which are yes and no. Are you coming today? Yes. Are you enjoying the talk? No. They are simple prosentences, but because they have the grammatical category of adverbs, we can't use them in all situations. For instance, they can't be the antecedents of conditionals. So to use these propositional variables as antecedent of a conditional, for instance, or as a way of making a special kind of assertion, we will need propositional variables of the sentential kind, just to maintain well-formedness. So I hope that by now this idea would be clear. If somebody says out of a context, what Victoria told you was true, what is he saying? And the answer is nothing at all. Asking what is somebody saying by the use of a truth ascription of this kind is like asking if she is blonde or if he is tall. Well, no idea. So if you don't put this expression to work in an appropriate context, and I can see or can discover who is the content to which you are referring to, I can't ask this kind of questions. So the idea is the one put forward by Austin, and is the following truism. It takes two to make a truth. Yes. A truth ascription is a second-order act. Truth ascriptions as sentences are perfectly meaningful sentences. So there is nothing wrong in this kind of sentence, as a sentence. But as a variable, it doesn't have a content unless you offer the context from which it can inherit it. But the context, so in this sense, I will explain this better probably in some other talks tomorrow or this afternoon or whatever. But the idea is you can point to the content of a pronoun, for instance. If somebody says he's late, and I ask who is he, and Sofia said he. Okay, you can point to a person to which this pronoun refers, but you can't point to a proposition. So the only way in which you can recover a proposition in a second-order act in which you are using a truth ascription is because there is a first-order assertive act in which a proposition has been put forward. This is why I have said that acts of truth ascription are second-order acts. And this is the whole mystery behind the liar paradox. There is nothing interesting in the liar paradox, as I will try to show you tomorrow or on Friday, I don't know when. Okay, so this is...
Yeah, we started late.
No, I'm going to stop already, okay? But just one thing. So these examples. If Victoria told you that Brazilian tradition in logic and philosophy is admired all over the world, and I said, what Victoria told you was true, what is the content I'm endorsing? The content I'm endorsing is this content. But if Victoria had said 2 plus 2 equals 4, and I said, okay, what Victoria told you was true, what I was saying myself was that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and so on. No mystery here. But the truth notion means the same. There is no fluctuation in the meaning of the notion. The notion is a means of building up a truth ascription, and a truth ascription is a propositional variable by means of which we can endorse any propositional content whatsoever. But the propositional content endorsed can be of any kind: formal, metaphysical, empirical, aesthetic, religious, or mystical, whatever you want. There is no restriction here. Okay? So we can stop here and then continue.
Yes, I just wanted to make some comments
Of course.
about your talk and maybe some questions.
So, but now I don't
Some
need to be
minutes
here.
before we have our coffee break. But so I have a very simple. Can I? Is it open in your pen?
No, it's an this is not a pen drive. It's just a device to.
Okay. Okay. You are working here.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can stay here.
I have some. Tu poderia só me ajudar rapidamente, só para... É aqui, né? Só abrir... Onde é que tô? Aqui. Não voltar. Não, é o meu que tá aqui. É o meu pendrive. E o workshop tá dentro dele. Só para mim, Ué, não abriu? Não leu.
Bom.
Que tá em Keynote. Keynote não lê, né? Não lê Keynote. Não. É Keynote, não tem. Ok. Ok, eu vou agora só um minutinho. Posso mudar rapidinho aqui? Por aqui. Vou mudar isso aqui.
Estou muito ofendido.
Ah, obrigada por fazer Maria, can I use this device? Where is it's on? Oh no, it's here. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I have some very few comments about what Maria already said. More questions and doubts than assertions, but I think my comments can clarify some of Maria's intentions and claims about truth. So I will put, and I hope you can reply so that we can clarify or a little bit more your proposal, okay? So you have a background that we can call a logicist background. So when you start your book, you say, we must understand quantifiers, we must understand variables, we must understand structures, logical structures, so as to understand truth. And not everybody would say that. But at the same time, you say, we need to be pragmatists. We need to understand the tradition of American pragmatism and also of English pragmatics, so Austin, Searle's English and American pragmatics. So that logic isn't enough to understand truth. So it isn't just a structure, it is also something that we must understand from speech act theory. So when you start to read your proposal, it's not very clear how you will do that. So,
May I answer this question?
Yeah,
It's
but
important. Now,
stay here.
oh my God. No, the idea is that now I'm going to say something really radical. Logic is nothing. To put it mildly. What I mean is that I have said at the beginning of my talk that I wrote this book on truth to get rid of the notion, and it's true because I want to work on quantifiers at the end. But again, I don't know why, but I cannot do it because all the time everybody is asking me about truth, which is I take it to be a quite trivial topic. What I mean is that my position in logic is exactly the same as my position about truth. I think that we can't understand logic, we can't understand prelude, we can't understand quantifiers, we can't understand conditional unless we understand what agents do when they use them. So my type of philosophy of logic, the type of philosophy of logic I'm engaged in is as a part of a general philosophy of language. So I think that we have done things very badly in the 20th century, and that this formalist tradition in logic has had very bad effects in our understanding of our inferential activity. So I'm not thinking of structures. I'm not thinking of logic in this sense. I use logic as an illustration, but the idea is, at the beginning of the 20th century, for instance, when John Ford was building cars for the first time, probably people tried to explain how cars worked to their children, saying that the motor of a car was like the heart. Now we do things in the other way. We say, okay, when we want to explain to children how a heart works, we say it is like the motor of a car. Why? Because we are much more familiar with cars than with, I don't know, anatomy or something like that. And this is the trick. So I think that we, all of us, the people who are interested in truth, are quite familiar with formal languages that we have considered to be logic. I don't know why, with formal languages. And this is why I try to take profit of this familiarity and talk about logic. But I'm not a formalist at all. So I'm also a pragmatist about logic.
Okay. So you destroyed my comment. I will comment anyway. But okay.
So I don't think
you mentioned Quine sometimes in your book, but so
to criticize him.
Oh, criticize. Okay, but anyway, but Quine was a kind of pragmatist, not a very bold one, not a very radical pragmatist. He was very, restricted in his pragmatism, I think, because it was behavioristic pragmatism, but at the same time, his proposal of understanding syntactic and semantic structures had a pragmatist background. Not very strong background, but it was a kind of background. So he tried to unify logical analysis with some pragmatist analysis. Very simple, no? About assertions that could be true or false, uterances that could be true or false. At the same time, true or false was something that wasn't the main goal for Quine to understand, in the sense that not the notion, not the term, not the concept. It was implicit in his theory that we use true and false uterances to inform, to communicate some content. And that was a presupposition for Quine's semantic, or for Quine's skeptical semantics, as some people want to call it. So I think your proposal isn't so far from Quine's in the sense that I wanted to say that, sorry, that you are in some sense still a logicist, and in some sense also not a strong pragmatist. That was my interpretation. Maybe I'm totally wrong.
No, but I know. No, what I mean is that I think that well, something also very radical, and I'm not going to put myself in front of the camera this time. I think that Quine's influence has been very damaging for the enterprise of the philosophy of logic in the 20th century. Has been terribly damaging. In the same sense in which Tarski's influence has been terribly damaging for the enterprise of understanding semantics in the 20th century. So what I mean is that I share with Quine some pragmatic intuition.
Don't put yourself there.
Well,
There.
so I share with Quine some pragmatic intuition, but I don't share some other basic ideas, for instance, the idea that classical, predicate calculus is the language of science and of sense and this kind of thing, or that to be the value of a variable or this kind of thing. I don't think so. Quine is a reductionist, and I'm not.
Okay. No, it's okay. We can discuss that afterwards. So, but okay, his pragmatism. I shouldn't put Quine in the center here and defend him. But I think another feature of Quine's pragmatism that seems to bring you close to him is that he thinks language is evolving, even if you think that he's a reductionist or something like that. For him, logical is historical, and logical it's dependent of a linguistic evolution. So what I wanted to say is that in your point of view, it seems to be important that truth is part of our engagement in communication, but at the same time that is also weak. That's not very strong. And maybe why? Because I couldn't yet understand how speech acts and context of speech acts would make a difference in the meaning of truth. Maybe because it seems from your point of view that it seems from your point of view, when you ask how to establish a complete theory of truth, that what is important is to know the meaning of truth, and afterwards to think about the multiple speech acts that we can perform using this kind of concepts. Isn't that right? No. Okay.
Because I think of myself as a genuine pragmatist. So I don't think that there are two different enterprises here. First, understanding the meaning of truth, and then seeing what is the contribution of the notion to the different speech acts in which it appears. For me, this is knowing the meaning of truth. There is nothing previous. Knowing the meaning of truth is understanding how it works in the different speech acts. And if we want to draw or to abstract a theory of the meaning of truth, about the meaning of truth. This is just, what I have said, an abstraction. So, because we have detected, I usually classify my positions in philosophy of language and in philosophy of logic as synthetic or empirical. So all these theses that I have listed at the beginning of my talk are, in my view, empirical, which means they are proposals of how we use the term. So it's an empirical hypothesis that we speakers use truth terms to build up propositional variables in order to be able to endorse content put forward in different assertive kind of different assertive speech acts. This is my position, but I don't think, I don't understand what would it mean to say that there is something like the meaning of truth, and then we look at the way in which agents use the term. Okay?
Okay, that's. I think I don't. I already spoke about some of what I wrote. I found it very interesting, the use of the Fürwort. Fürwort in German is very clear. It's translated by pro-word, huh? Or here I didn't translate it right, but so it was from Bolzano
or maybe
Brentano.
or both. So at the end, what I mean is that at the end of the 19th century, people in Middle Europe began to use the word fiasetze.
Yes,
with this
yes,
same meaning. With this same meaning. Frege didn't do it, but Ramsey in English.
Yes. Okay. So it is interesting to have it in German, written in German, because it's stronger, I think, for us to hear the für than the pro. It seems more enlightening than to hear the pro, because pro isn't a preposition, and für is a preposition in German. So, and I think it's translated very well your approach, in the sense that you mean what you mean by true is what you mean, what you think true means for us is that we use the predicate is true to emphasize a content, a propositional content. So we give we give a word for it, in the sense that we speak in pro of it, So I found the origin of this pro sentence or pro word very interesting, so as to understand your approach.
I don't know whether Ramsey knew this use of the word fiasat. I don't know if they are two different, two independent traditions. I don't know, but it's interesting. This idea was, let's say, was in the air.
Okay,
We haven't heard what is
so what I mean.
Maybe we should.
We should return, or Frápolli should return to it afterwards.
Yes, no, maybe
no?
we should go. We should let you finish with your comment, and then we can reply, because we could back and forth.
okay,
Going on,
okay.
because I don't know what it throws at.
Okay.
No, I am just referring to the Fürsatz or Fürwort because as I read it in Maria's book, for Maria it's very important, as she wrote here, this movement here. So this reference, this is, I think, the most important, so as to understand what she means by high-order concept. So when you have this structure where you say this is true, what is this structure permits to refer to a proposition. So this reference is a für reference in the sense that I give my word, or I am proud of, I am in favor. That would be, I think, the best interpretation. I am in favor of this content. I agree with this content here. So in German, für is, I agree with that. And this was very clarifying when I read, as a German speaker, when I read Fürwort, oh, that's it. And afterwards, Maria also, we discussed a little bit about that, and it was, I got the idea that was, I think that's very central for your understanding of truth. So when you say a sentence, a proposition or a sentence that includes the predicate, it's true, what you are doing is you are referring to a content with which you agree. And that, I think, is central. That would be. I think I would like today, tomorrow, and after to discuss more about this link you do between logic and pragmatism. I'm not sure how it is done. Okay, but let us. Now we have a break for a coffee outside, and we will return at. Now it is not 4 right now. Huh? 40?
20 to 4.
Okay, then we return at 4 o'clock to the continuation of Maria's presentation. Okay, she will speak about the distinction of synthetic, semantic, and pragmatics, and maybe destroy it. I don't know. Okay, thank you very much. We come back. Maria.
Dá para deixar as coisas aqui?
Sim, sim. Sempre vai estar uma pessoa aqui. Se todos saírem, nós fechamos a sala.
Tá bom, obrigada.